Of course it wasn't rigged, guys. It wasn't rigged. Just because somebody drops a ball in a selector before they're supposed to, takes it out, shows the logo, drops it back in, does not mean the draft lottery was rigged. Now, of course, with the way draft lotteries work, it was going to be rigged no matter what. We talked a lot yesterday about, of course, the teams that were in the mix from losing in the qualifying round, and it doesn't really matter who it was going to be. If Toronto loses, oh, of course it went to Toronto. If Pittsburgh wins it, oh, of course it went to Pittsburgh. I said if Toronto loses it, as in they lose and then they win. You get the point. Pittsburgh wins it, oh, of course. Minnesota wins it, oh, they're just trying to make the Wild good finally because Minnesota is such a big hockey market. If the Florida Panthers win, oh my God. Well, they should just move the team to Quebec, but no, they're making sure that they stay because they got Lafreniere. No matter what people were going to say, oh, the lottery was rigged. At the end of the day, the New York Rangers get the number 1 overall pick and are likely to pick up Alexis Lafreniere, number 1 overall. Of course, people have already been speculating, oh, are they going to trade the... No, you're not going to trade the pick unless you are able to bring in... I mean, I talked about this in the very long, almost podcast-esque episode that went up on the channel today as well. But when you look at the New York Rangers, what do you really need? You need defense. So unless you were to get this ridiculous trade package that could help you boost up that defense even more and at a somewhat discounted rate, there's no way you're moving that pick. And then you get into the discussion of you have Lafreniere hand-gifted to you, you're going to then trade that pick? I mean, the Rangers could technically get away with it. They don't have the worst forward prospect pool in the world, although it's getting a little bit thin now in the system, but obviously, you know, you look at who they have on roster with Capo Caco, Philip Hedl, Brett Howden. You know, there are options there, of course, but at the end of the day, the Rangers get the number 1 overall pick. They're going to be making that pick, and they're going to pick who you think they're going to pick, and it is a tremendous day if you're a fan of the New York Rangers, who again now have that number 1 pick. You have Los Angeles at 2, Ottawa, of course, 3 and 5. The big losers today. They were the big losers when the original lottery happened. The Detroit Red Wings only picking at number 4, but it is a pretty damn deep draft through this first round. So obviously, you want the number 1 pick. You want to get Lafreniere, but there are other players available that will make it worth it. You know, just to have a high pick in this draft. Very intrigued to see what the Pittsburgh Penguins do. I might actually be more intrigued to see what they do over anybody else, because Carolina now has Toronto's first-round pick. Of course, had Toronto won the lottery, I'm sure they would have kept their pick instead of giving it to Carolina. You could argue what would be more beneficial to Toronto, having the 13th overall pick this year, or hopefully getting rid of a later pick next year. But with the way that keeps going, again, who's to say where they're going to end up next year? And of course, you can get my thoughts on the Maple Leafs in that extended video. But the interesting pick here is going to be Pittsburgh. Whether or not they're going to give that up and it's going to go to Minnesota, by the time this video comes out, we might already know that. I think what the Penguins decide to do with that selection, it's going to be very interesting. Of course, Toronto didn't necessarily have the choice. It was, based on, it was lottery protected, right? But obviously for Toronto, it's like, okay, you don't get the number 1. That 13th pick might have been more helpful. Just talking about the trade conditions and the way they played out. But with Pittsburgh, I think what they do with that pick is really going to indicate what their focus is heading into this offseason, as they do have a very interesting offseason ahead of them. Bottom line, for the New York Rangers, you are going to be adding Alexis Lafreniere to a team that already boasts the likes of Panarin and Zibanejad. Of course, you just re-signed Chris Kreider. That's another major game changer that they needed. Whether or not they look to move, say, Panarin or Lafreniere, who is a left wing as far as I'm aware, whether or not they look to move him or one of the other wingers to that right-hand side, because that right-hand side, it's interesting. I mean, Buchnevich, Strome can play the right, Fost, Kako. I'm intrigued to see how Lafreniere fits on that team. But the bottom line is, Alexis Lafreniere is going to be a member of the New York Rangers, as insane as that is. So we talked about it yesterday. Huge win for the Rangers to... not only, to get bounced the way they did and have a chance at the pick, they didn't get the number 1 overall pick. It's just such a huge win for a team that's already in the past 2.5 years said, hey, look, we're going to rebuild. And through some very shrewd moves, through some interesting free agent signings, and now through a little bit of lottery luck, things are looking even better for the New York Rangers. Probably too little too late for Henrik Lundqvist. But hey, it's something for that fan base. So, again, in terms of the lottery being rigged, no, not at all. Am I disappointed that the Rangers got this pick? Not necessarily. I got to be honest. I mean, you talk about the qualifier. I mean, him going to Edmonton, people would have called rigged anyway. Lafreniere, and again, him, number one pick, it's going to be Lafreniere. Lafreniere to Edmonton, people would have called rigged. I gotta be honest, I'm kind of glad he's not going to Edmonton, because at least we have something different to talk about instead of Edmonton winning a lottery. Pittsburgh, I think that's a lot more interesting for that organization moving forward that they didn't win the lottery, because now it's like, okay, you got to make some tough decisions here. Nashville, I mean, it would have been interesting. It certainly would have helped that team. The Panthers, I got to be honest, it would have been nice to see the Panthers of the Wild get it just to boost them up a little bit. They need something. It would have been nice for Winnipeg after their unfortunate injury luck and losing half of their defense this year. And then Toronto, I mean, the world would have exploded. Toronto, you lose to the 3-0, or you get the 3-0 comeback, you lose to the 3-0 comeback, you lose in Game 5. I had those out of order. But then you end up winning the lottery. The NHL's crazy right now. Congrats to Rangers fans. Hopefully this ranting and rambling reaction was solid enough, but it is hard to wrap your head around that, like, oh yeah, no, Lafreniere is going to be a member of the New York Rangers. I can't wait to see what happens next in the playoffs and then heading into free agency, which will be in like September. Following hockey's crazy right now.